there's what I would do, and there's what the fiduciary responsibility is. So what I'm trying to do is figure out, this is a question of managing risk. This is not a question of deciding who's going to pay for what and who's going to. This is a question of risk. So without talking about the details of the case, what is the comfort level that an outcome could be, a positive outcome? Because I have to tell you, and I just watched it the other day again, the idea, or the when we had the other special meeting that I wasn't here for, Mr. Lincoln made the point that I had never thought about. Is what about pushing an unfavorable outcome here? As then you lose both ways, and then all these, maybe perhaps some of these things, which are by no doubt a little hysterical, do come to pass. Is that how do we gauge that? How do we make a dispassionate risk? How do we as public officials say, I'm gonna wanna protect anyone from serving naturally? And I think it's a given up to this point to cover all the fees and all that stuff. What I'm saying is, from a public standpoint, going forward and getting into the expenditures of whatever at the circuit level, at the appellate level, at the whatever, that's what we're getting at. Is how big of a figure are we looking at? What we have to start thinking about this like it's our own money, and that's what that's what I'm trying to do. Is, okay, how am I going to assess the risk? How do I dispassionately assess the risk? You have an idea on that? No.
Well, as you pointed out, I certainly don't want to start talking about the facts of the case, but there are certainly, I'd say, potentially viable defenses and counter-arguments. I just can't give you a percentage or an evaluation of the risk. It's just not possible in a situation like this. As I said, that's why I think it's just a matter of individual conscience under these circumstances, that you have to let that individual commissioner decide if she or he, under the circumstances, is willing to take the risk. And we have a commissioner who is, and I think she should be allowed to. That's not saying that it's a right decision or a wrong decision. It's just her decision that I think she should be allowed to make.
No question. Absolutely no question about it. But this is a question of taking that risk in this definition is the fiduciary risk that the city takes. And I understand that's very cold-hearted and all that kind of stuff. But what I'm saying is, how do you, if you're in my shoes, how do you square that to make sure that you're acting responsibly? Because, I don't know where this could go. I mean, I'm not an attorney. I can't judge, but I get the sense that this is not, and I'm not putting words in anyone's mouth. I'm just saying I don't get the abundance of optimism. And that's just my perception. And I didn't get that. If I get that, then maybe I'd be a little more confident.
No case is entirely free from problems.
Of course.
But there are, like I think Mr. Lincoln alluded to, a good faith defense. And again, it's difficult because I don't want to talk about the facts or what that is, because I don't think that's appropriate. But I think, if I thought the risk was so high, if I thought the risk was that high, I probably wouldn't have recommended what I did. I just think that there is a risk, undeniably. Undeniably, there'll be a significant expense. But even under both of those circumstances, I still think it's something that you ought to do when you look at the totality of the circumstances here.
Vice Mayor?
Yes, sir. I'm full of optimism. I'm fully willing to go forward supporting any of us sitting here. And I'm going to take us out of this and put you in me. I'm a survivor of cancer. It was a risk to take a treatment or go forward and die. I would rather take the risk and come out one way or the other, but you don't have that choice. I could, oh no, doctor, I don't think I'm going to.
Yeah, and could I add to that? I think, the two other points that I mentioned about the chilling effect on candidates, one way or the other, that still applies. And then, I think just you have to look at things beyond the risk too. There's just more to it than that. I just think that it's a matter of conscience for the individual commissioner to decide. I think it's just of benefit to the city overall.
Vice Mayor?
Mayor, I'm ready to call for the question. I rather make a motion at this time? The motion is made that we go forward with full payment in the litigation of Ms. Chapman's case at this time.
Can I clarify that?
Yes.
What is this? Is this an unlimited whatever it goes to?
Mr. With all respect, sir,
Supreme Court, yada yada yada.
the options that were given to us was full payment, 6 months.
Well,
And
Can I say one more thing.
Yes, we
before
have a
you get to the
motion.
and
We-
maybe clarify. The point I forgot to make a minute ago when Commissioner Caragiullo asked about the risk was the benefit to getting court to weigh in on the issue, I think, sort of transcends the risk argument, because even if Commissioner Chapman were to be unsuccessful, we'd still have guidance from the court. We'd know what the court thought. So that's a benefit either way, and that's the point I couldn't think of a minute ago that I wanted to make. And I would not recommend, when I said all the way, I meant all through the circuit court. You certainly don't want to make a decision about going beyond that until you see what the opinion of the circuit court was. And then the fallback position I had was that you authorize the fees being paid for some meaningful period. I suggested 6 months, say till June 1st with a review, and then another 6 months if you are uncomfortable just authorizing it all the way through. But something meaningful to where she could have a meaningful defense of the case and not have to worry about funding it.
Thank you. Vice Mayor, you have a motion. Do you want to clarify it?
With the point that Mr. Fournier has made to the appeal to the circuit court,
Okay.
I would be willing to go with that.
Motion dies for lack of second. Commissioners, is there another motion?
The motion is made to carry this forth with a 6 month. I mean, this is ridiculous to sit here and play with each other in the simplest of matters. This is, I'm here. I'm not just yet. I haven't gotten there yet. I will make the motion that we support our fellow commissioner to the fullest of the.
My alternatives were either resolution through the circuit court proceedings or at a minimum, in an increment of 6
I would even go with the 6 months, but
That's the motion.
that's the motion.
And of course, it would be readdressed to the status report.
I'm sorry.
Would I anticipate if the motion to cover the fees for 6 months was approved, then there would be a status report given, and would be reauthorized at that time, assuming the case was proceeding satisfactorily. But you'd review it.
Motion dies for lack of second. Commissioners, is there a motion?
May I ask a question before
Sure.
we get to the motion? What would these other commissioners make a suggestion of? And before you make a motion, just what are you looking for? What did they tell you to tell us? Because whoever they are, because I feel really, really saddened that we would allow ourselves to be intimidated and humiliated as a sitting city commissioner representing the city of Sarasota. I'm appalled at.
Commissioners, is there another motion?
I don't know what to say to that.
I'll pass the gavel and make the motion. Let's get on. I move that we pay for all the legal bills through the end of the week for Commissioner Chapman. Guys, you got
Let's have the noise, please. Thank you. Motion dies for the lack of a second. Is there another motion? Finding no motion, I move that we, at this time, go into a continuance, if that's the proper thing, sir, or at least maybe we should have a sunshine out of a shade meeting.
Well, I don't think we can anymore. There's no suit against the city commission. That was settled.
Yeah, I like to say, I got it. I like to say one thing. You know what, Vice Mayor and I disagree on this issue. At least there needs to be some more conversation here. We're not the only two at the table. We've obviously staked out our ground, and whether we may be at opposite ends of it, there needs to be some other conversation here.
I'm going to make some statements here, whatever happens here, but I just want to say, first of all, I'd like to say at the outset here that perhaps it would be inconsistent for me to approve this. And I know we are not approving anything right now. I made a decision to settle with the city and my own personal lawsuit. I'm very pleased with my decision. Everyone has the right to defend, challenge any charges against them to the full extent that they choose. But what I want to say is this is not about me. I had to make the decision based on my responsibility to not only my commission, but 54,000 people in the city of Sarasota who count on fiscal stewardship. I did not base my decision on emotion, anger, or gossip. I decided that I was not going to have you, this is when I wrote it, I decided not to have all of you, the commission, the citizens, taxpayers, take on the courage of my convictions. How do I ask you to take the risk? And I'm asking that. I have thought a great deal about this, and I can't take the city on a risk-reward trip and hold the city's finances hostage. We need to balance some level. We need to balance the moral imperative here with the risks involved. Are we asking the city to take on the burden of an individual's decision, which I clearly defend the right to do? But I have to tell you that the merits of the case are certainly not lost on me. I think everyone is concerned about how we interpret the sunshine and ways we can move forward, but I don't feel anyway that I have the luxury of holding fast to my views on this, and I'm not alone up here. The concern that no one will want to get involved, I've heard all that, absolutely. Whether to run for office, volunteer, especially me. I try to be everywhere representing my city, but sunshine is here to stay, as frustrating as it is. But I worry. I worry that the city taking on financially to an uncertain future is tough. This risk-reward is real tough. Even if the lawsuit is won, does that end our responsibility with and to sunshine and our relationship with citizens for sunshine? So those are my comments on that. I would like to say something also.
I appreciate your stance, and you're entitled to it. And again, Mayor, I thank you. But this is bigger than us. This is bigger than the moment. Not everybody has the luxury of having the financial stability that you may have had. Not everybody seeking this commission seat will come having what you have. That's why it was open. We had to go from 1979 to 1985 just to get representation at the table as a district. The city, why are we giving in to this fear? That's what you told me earlier. This great fear you have of this. What fear do you have? If I were in the street, I'd see you punking out.
Commissioner Chapman.
I would like to talk about citizens for responsible government versus the city of Sarasota, because I think that reduces some of the downside risk that Commissioner Atwell was talking about. There have been 2 votes in public at publicly noticed hearings since this event at least two. And there is nothing to indicate that there was any out of the sunshine deal making between Commissioner Atwell and me, because we voted differently on each issue. So there is no secret deal making. There was no secret deal. And according to Citizens for Responsible Government versus the City of Sarasota, a subsequent publicly noticed meeting is a cure. Do you want to address that?
Well, yes. I mean, I think you're right, but I don't know. Okay, you're trying to say that it's already been cured by the two subsequent meetings. I'm not sure, because you couldn't have taken a vote. What the cure normally comes up is the context of if a committee with a quorum meets outside of the sunshine, and they have some discussion that's outside of the sunshine, right, and then they cure it. So it wouldn't be an actual vote to cure. You're just saying if there was any discussion, you've discussed it subsequently. Well, I guess that's another potential defense that you could raise.
Right. But the point about it is that the Sunshine Law is about secret deal making. If we vote differently on the basic issue,
I hear your point. Yeah.
I mean, that reduces some of the downside risk. Not that we were voting differently for reducing downside risk. It's just we have different opinions. But the point about that. And the other thing I would like to address is on blogs, I've actually been accused of being a liar. And I would like to pass out things that indicate that I wasn't lying when I made my statement at the last commission meeting about not knowing about a deal. And you have already verified about the November 1 issue was not accepted, and another offer. But the reality is that I wasn't lying. And here is the email with my attorney when I asked, has there been an offer that would not hold me responsible for violating the Sunshine Law? Is that correct? And his answer is nobody has made any offer to us that included us. And that was on November 12th. But I do think that it is important to know that the reason that I want to go forward is the right of assembly reason, the right of assembly on this issue.
Has that been tested?
Not to my knowledge is a defense in a Sunshine Law case that I'm aware of. I think the way this stands now is there was authorization given at the last meeting to pay the fees through today, if I'm not mistaken. So right. I'll receive probably invoices from Mr. Harrison and Mr. Fuller for November, and we'll pay those. Now, this doesn't prevent Commissioner Chapman from going forward with the defense of her case, but you could certainly facilitate her ability to do that by authorizing some payment. If you don't, I guess she has to decide, does she want to go forward, and then the question will come back to you at the conclusion of the case. And there may be a big bill, or there may not, or the order may be phrased in such a way that you will have to have a discussion about it. I just think, though, that, well, I won't keep repeating myself, but I'll just say one more time that you shouldn't compromise her ability to meaningfully defend her suit if she chooses to do that.
Well, and you should also know that we did make an offer, and we did put an offer on the table that was related to Ms. Atwell's deal that she got that I did not know about until she actually announced it in a public meeting. But I have attended the 7-hour Sunshine Law seminar on October 17. I did attend the city seminar. I don't know about the I think the $500 donation with the donation from the other side is sort of a face-saving way to make it appear that there was a Sunshine Law violation when there wasn't an admission of a Sunshine Law violation. But I think it's important to know, for people to understand that there is this important burden that's being placed on the city by the position of Citizens for Sunshine, and that's a burden for both the city attorney and the city auditor and clerk. The city attorney now has to give legal opinions for almost everything we do, and the city auditor and clerk is noticing a lot of meetings that she didn't notice before, and is having to send people to take minutes.
Is that on the kind of
Well,
is that your doing?
I was going to put that on the agenda tonight for discussion. I'm glad I didn't, because I thought there might be a little bit of overload on this subject, but I'll have more to say about that in January. I think we need to discuss that, and there were some emails. I know the one from the chair of the planning board hasn't been answered yet, and I feel bad about that. I want to discuss that, but I don't think the law has changed on that regard, but I don't want to stray too far from the subject, so I don't want to get into.
Mr. Carrigan.
And again, kind of more to the point that Mr. Lincoln made is, I think that the law is ridiculous. I think that it's ridiculous, and I've said it 1,000 times, and I don't know what more you got to say to that. It's not a question of do I think you all did anything wrong, or do I backing you up on that stuff. As there was a point was made was that in this particular case, it was basically the fault of nobody on the city commission that these kind of stars have aligned. So I'm trying to figure out a way for the city to remediate. To base. Do I think that Commissioner Chapman's cost should be covered? That she should have any burden in this financial? Of course not. That's absurd. But the question is going forward. What is our responsibility going forward? What is the effect of it? If it's the kind of thing where I don't know what your offer to settle was, but I think that you should. Well, and I'm not going to hack over $500 to a donation, which is minor form of harassment, if you ask me. Figure out a way for her to be made whole without admitting fault, because I don't think that she thinks she did anything wrong. I don't necessarily think that she did anything wrong with intent. That's not what this is about. This is just about managing the risk. That's all. So, and with all due respect, nobody's crawled in my head.
I certainly know about that.
Well, the other thing is, what are Citizens for Sunshine going to do? What are they going to do? Are they going to still assert that when a meeting is held, that some civic organization holds, that just two commissioners attending? This case has been tried in the press, but I can assure you that facts that have been tried in the press are very different from what actually happened. And we have had an investigator out there to determine what people heard, what people saw, and they're very different from what has been tried in the press, I can assure you.
And just to clarify, now Commissioner Atwell didn't admit any fault.
No, there was no admission of a violation in that agreement.
No.
So there was no.
But if you have questions, Mr. Fuller had an in-person conversation with Andrea Mogensen about our offer, and she said she hadn't had time to review it and hasn't gotten back to us. But what happened instead was a demand to set depositions. You want to explain that, Bob? That a demand to set deposition kind of means that you're not accepting any offer.
Does indicate that you'd plan to go forward with the case, or you wouldn't spend the time to take the depositions.
Right.
Commissioners, what's your pleasure?
No pleasure involved in this.
I understand that, but we have to make a decision.
Mayor, what happens if we reach a stalemate, or Attorney Fournier?
Well, you need 3 votes to approve anything. 3
no,
of
but
the
if
4.
a motion, if
you have a tie, is that what you're asking me?
if there's no motion made, or the motions keep dying for lack of second.
The last motion was made was to continue the payment to the December 2nd, correct?
Correct. That was made 2 weeks ago to continue through today. So that's what we have right now. So, and I just felt I had to raise the issue because the bills come to me and I have to know whether or not to pay them. So
what amounts to is after today, There is no motion to continue payment.
But you understand if the suit goes forward and Commissioner Chapman prevails, you will, right? Or if a settlement is reached without an admission of liability in the next few weeks, then you'd have to cover the cost to get there.
And I think that that's fully in the city's interests, and that's not at issue here. We still get the same point.
And then I don't, then you just wait to see what the final order says if you're not willing to authorize anything today to extend that period. I think I've pretty much said everything I can say, unless there are questions.
I think we should, I guess we make a motion to extend.
That's what I was going to ask. Is that the next
I say-
motion?
I would say, I'm prepared to make a motion.
Go ahead.
I said I'm prepared to make a motion. I would make a motion to extend payment of fees the next 90 days. Can you look after the city's interest in any way, shape, or form here?
Well, I can consult with Mr. Fuller about what's happening or question the bills. I get the bills, and he might want to redact certain things since
Absolutely,
they are public records, and he doesn't want to give
doesn't want to
away
hinder his
litigation
defense, right?
strategy. But I think I make inquiries to satisfy myself what was done, and I typically do that. I look over the bills that are submitted. So, yes, I would continue to do that.
I'll second that motion.
Motion is made by Commissioner Carajula, second by Vice Mayor Shaw. Anybody want to speak to the motion?
I think, I'd have to defer to Commissioner Zatwell's comments. I think that they were very well thought out, and, at the end of the day, this is just trying to assess a responsibility. Nobody should be left out in the cold to pay the bills, and that's not what we want to do right now, but I think we should give this some more time to perhaps dispose of the case, and then we'll look at it from there.
Fine.
All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Chair votes no. Motion passes 3-1. We're adjourned.